Milk famously ages very badly, and so have these albums that we're about to go through, whether it be because of the lyrical content, the sound itself, or even events that followed these projects. These are a few albums that aged like milk. I'm sure this one is bound to be controversial, but stay with me. Playboi Carti's third studio album, Music, came out just this year, and yet its appeal has already worn off. Despite being one of the most hyped and anticipated albums in recent times, or maybe because of that, Music has aged poorly since its release, which is typically the opposite effect that Playboi Carti albums tend to have. So how has this happened? In the first week, the album sold around 300,000 copies, making it one of the highest selling projects of 2025. But whilst it had insanely high streaming numbers, it's important to note that the album had 30 songs on the track list, which really helped to boost its numbers. Either way, all the hype built up in the previous 5 years meant that Carti saw massive success on the charts, but it hasn't got the longevity his previous projects achieved, which is due to a lack of innovation in his new music. As someone who prides himself on developing new sounds with each of his projects, the long-awaited Music sounded uninspired and too similar to other artists. I mean, the difference between Whole Lotta Red and Music is night and day in terms of innovation. The latest album is sort of a homage or love letter to Atlanta instead of something more original. And for this reason, Music has come and gone. Just take a look at his 10 most popular songs on Spotify. Only 2 of them are from his latest album, and it only released this year. To make matters even worse, some of the more popular songs like Rather Lie and also Find It have been exposed for using AI. So not only has Carti not developed his sound since Whole Lotta Red, he's also decided to not even perform his own music, despite the fact that he had 5 years to release this album. Had Music been released a few years after Whole Lotta Red, or just been much shorter, I'm sure it would have been received better. But the fact that fans waited this long for a lazy and bloated project means that it has unfortunately been the first Playboi Carti album to age like milk. Once again, this is just an opinion, and I do believe that there are still some gems on Music, and who knows, perhaps it will have a Whole Lotta Red type of revival. This next one is bound to annoy a particular fan base, but Recovery by Eminem is one of the biggest victims of age and perhaps even nostalgia. Back in 2010, this album was monumental as it sold an incredible 741,000 copies in the first week and managed to appeal to audiences outside of hip hop through its pop style sound. Unfortunately, this album is probably what brought about the many Eminem fans who don't actually like hip hop as a whole, just Eminem. For a lot of people, this is the album that truly got them into the artist, as he took a turn away from his music that focused on shock factor and out-of-pocket lyrics, instead focusing on more emotional topics like his battle with addiction. This decision birthed hit songs like Not Afraid and Love the Way You Lie, which dominated the 2010s and have now garnered way over 1 billion streams on Spotify alone. However, the 2010s is exactly where this album should have stayed, as today the album sounds incredibly dated and most of its track list has aged like milk, which is mostly down to the pop/rap production that I mentioned earlier. Most of the songs feature overproduced beats with choruses that, in fairness, were perfect to dominate the charts and the hearts of certain demographics. The perfect example of this is Won't Back Down, which, put frankly, sounds horrible in this day and age, and if it released today, I'm willing to bet that it will get AI allegations due to how robotic it sounds. Furthermore, in typical Eminem fashion, lyrics relating to pop culture at the time are also dotted all throughout the project, which once again limits its ability to age well, as listeners are constantly reminded of when the album came out. It wouldn't be as much of a problem if the lines were good, but for the most part each one is unnecessary and just made it seem like the artist had run out of things to rap about. Eminem's chase for radio play and foray into pop music did see him become one of the biggest artists of last decade, but it seems like ever since Recovery, his hip hop records just haven't been the same. He never quite managed to leave behind the cringy punchlines and robotic pop sound that began with this album. Now before we reveal the final album, make sure to subscribe and also enjoy 2 honourable mentions that have also aged poorly. The Big Day by Chance the Rapper, an album that was blasted by critics and fans on release, has managed to age even worse, as the album dedicated to his wife is now meaningless as they have since split up, meaning Chance the Rapper destroyed his career for someone that he is no longer with. American Dream by 21 Savage is another that received mixed reviews, but for an album that had considerable hype, it is never mentioned anymore, and it seems to have been long forgotten since its release due to its repetitive nature and lack of development from the artist. In 2018, Kanye West dropped his 8th studio album titled Ye, which features songs like Violent Crimes and Ghost Town. Since then, the album has been consistently regarded as one of the artist's most concise and personal albums, with Kanye tackling several emotional themes such as his mental illness. The album cover and several of the songs are borderline iconic and often rank highly within Kanye's catalogue of music, and although the album still holds up today in terms of how it sounds, it is still managed to age terribly. So how could this be? Well, for a start, one of the songs is titled Wouldn't Leave, and I think you can see where this one is going. The 4th track on the album is dedicated to Kim Kardashian, who was Ye's wife at the time. On the song, Kanye expresses his love and gratitude for Kim Kardashian, as despite all of his crazy takes and wild controversies, and specifically his slavery rant on TMZ, his wife never left his side and continued to back him, even though Ye thought she would leave him on several occasions. Just a few years later, however, this song and Kanye's lyrics would age terribly, as Kim would eventually grow tired of Ye's antics, which resulted in a long-winded separation, with the divorce eventually finalizing in 2022. Marking the end of an iconic relationship between the two stars. It seems that she would in fact leave. Furthermore, the most streamed song of the album, Violent Crimes, is one that tackles themes of misogyny and sexism, things that the artist has admitted to struggling with throughout the majority of his career. The song seemed to be Kanye's realization of his wrongdoings towards women over the years, and now having a daughter had completely changed his mindset, and for a few years it seemed like the artist had truly changed. Kanye's bipolar nature, however, means that this song has also aged like milk. In recent years, Kanye's been married to Bianca Sensory, and those have certainly been a wild few years. Aside from the outfits he dresses her in, the artist has claimed to have a dominion over his wife, which clearly showcases Kanye's relapse of misogyny. Violent Crimes was further invalidated when Ye showed support for Diddy. The owner of Bad Boy Records has been charged with several crimes, with most being of a sexual or violent nature. Video evidence has even been released against Diddy, and yet Kanye still managed to support him. Everything Kanye opposed on the outro of Ye, he has now shown support for, and even admitted to doing himself, meaning that this is just another song of his that is aged like milk. What was once his most personal and vulnerable album is now just a body of work that sounds good. I guess being bipolar isn't actually awesome. Whilst this video is about albums that age like milk, it's important to note that they all encapsulate a particular moment in time. Apart from a few scenarios, music almost never predicts the future, and so if you enjoy any of these albums, then continue doing so. Besides, things are bound to change, and so could the opinion on these albums.
Someday I will